I pressed save on my laptop for what felt like the 100th time that night, squinting at the glowing screen through exhausted eyes. My translation client had needed this contract by morning, something about an international deal that couldn't wait, and I'd spent the last 6 hours converting dense legal Italian into equally dense legal English. The words had started blurring together around hour 4, but I couldn't afford to turn down work. Not when the bills were piling up faster than I could translate them away. My phone sat silent beside me on the sagging couch. Too silent. Chloe should have texted by now. I grabbed it, checking the time. 10:22. Her tutoring session at the library ended at 9, and even with the subway delays that plagued Queens at night, she should have been home by 9:45 at the latest. I'd called twice already, both times going straight to voicemail. The sensible part of my brain said her phone battery probably died. The mother part, the one that had kept me alive and functioning through 3 years of single parenthood in one of the most unforgiving cities in the world, was screaming that something was wrong. I dialed again, straight to voicemail. "Chloe, it's Mom. I'm getting worried. Call me as soon as you get this." The apartment felt smaller than usual, the walls pressing in with their water-stained patterns and peeling paint. Our neighbor upstairs was arguing with someone. The familiar rhythm of shouting and stomping that had become the soundtrack to our lives here. I'd told myself this place was temporary when we moved in 2 years ago, after the divorce. After Ryan had disappeared with what little money we had left. Temporary had a way of becoming permanent when you were barely keeping your head above water. I stood, pacing the narrow strip of floor between our second-hand couch and the kitchen that was really just a corner with a stove and a sink. My reflection caught in the darkened window. A tired woman with hair that needed a trim and clothes that had seen better days. 34 years old, and I looked older, worn down by the constant grind of trying to provide for a 15-year-old daughter on a freelancer's income. 10:30. No text, no call. That was it. I grabbed my jacket, the thin one that did almost nothing against November's cold but was all I had, and shoved my phone into my pocket. The sensible voice in my head pointed out that I had no idea where to even start looking. That Chloe was probably fine and I was overreacting. The mother voice told the sensible voice to shut up. Outside, the night air bit through my jacket immediately. Queens at this hour was a strange mix of too loud and too quiet. Pockets of noise from bars and bodegas punctuated by stretches of empty sidewalk that made my skin crawl. I'd walked these streets 1,000 times, but never without watching over my shoulder. Never without my keys laced between my fingers like makeshift claws. I headed toward the subway station 3 blocks away, the route Chloe would have taken home. My breath came out in visible puffs as I walked faster, scanning every face I passed, every shadowy doorway. A group of men stood outside a corner store, their conversation stopping as I approached. I kept my eyes forward, my pace steady, channeling the kind of confidence I didn't feel. They let me pass without comment. The subway entrance was empty, the token booth attendant barely glancing up as I peered down the stairs. No sign of her. I pulled out my phone again, dialing with shaking fingers. Voicemail. "Chloe, please. I'm out looking for you. I'm worried. Just let me know you're okay." I turned back toward the street, mind racing through possibilities I didn't want to consider. The library was another 10 blocks north. Maybe she'd stayed late, lost track of time. Maybe her phone really was dead, and she was walking home right now, about to turn the corner and wonder why I was standing here looking panicked. Thunder rumbled overhead, and I looked up to see dark clouds blocking out what little moonlight had filtered through the city's perpetual glow. Perfect. Because this night needed to get worse. The first drops hit my face as I started walking toward the library. Within minutes, it became a downpour, the kind of sudden deluge that only happened in bad movies and apparently my life. My jacket was soaked through immediately, my hair plastered to my skull. But I kept walking. The library was closed by now. I knew that. But maybe I'd find her somewhere along the way. Maybe she'd taken shelter from the rain. The streets emptied as the storm intensified. Smart people were inside, dry, safe. I was out here searching for my daughter in the dark, with no plan and no idea if I was even going in the right direction. But what else could I do? Sit at home and wait. Hope that everything was fine when my gut was telling me it wasn't. I passed the 24-hour laundromat, its fluorescent lights harsh against the darkness. A few people sat inside, staring at their phones or watching their clothes tumble. None of them were Chloe. The pizza place next door was closing up, the owner pulling down the metal gate. He didn't look at me as I passed. My phone buzzed and I nearly dropped it in my haste to check. Unknown number. I answered anyway. Desperate. Hello? Static. Then silence. Then the call dropped. I swore under my breath, trying to call back, but it went nowhere. Probably a wrong number, but my heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. 6 blocks from home now. Heading into a part of Queens I usually avoided after dark. The buildings here were more run down, the streetlights more sporadic. But there was a park up ahead, one with a covered pavilion where kids sometimes hung out. Maybe Chloe had gone there to wait out the rain. The park was darker than the street, the few lamps that worked casting sickly yellow pools of light. I could see the pavilion ahead, its roof just visible through the rain. Someone was sitting there, a dark figure on one of the benches. My heart leaped, then fell as I got closer and realized it was too large to be Chloe, too broad-shouldered. I was about to turn away when I heard it. Running footsteps, splashing through puddles, then a voice, young and terrified. Please, please help me. I spun around and there she was, my daughter, soaking wet and running toward the pavilion like her life depended on it. Relief flooded through me so intensely I almost collapsed. She was alive. She was here. She was not looking at me, looking at the man on the bench, the stranger I'd been about to walk away from. And behind her, maybe 20 feet back, another figure, a man in a dark hoodie, moving fast. "Chloe!" I screamed, but she didn't hear me over the rain and her own terror. She reached the pavilion, stumbling up the steps, and threw herself toward the seated man. "Please," she sobbed, and I could hear the raw fear in her voice, even from where I stood. "That man, he's been following me. He tried to grab me. Please help me." I ran. My legs moved without conscious thought, driven by pure maternal instinct. Nothing else mattered except getting to my daughter. The hooded man had reached the pavilion steps now, and I could see him more clearly under the lamplight. He was bigger than I'd thought, his face shadowed but his body language aggressive. Entitled. The seated man stood. Even through the rain and my panic, I registered certain things about him. The expensive cut of his clothes, the way he moved with absolute certainty, the fact that despite being caught in the middle of a rainstorm, he looked completely in control. He stepped in front of Chloe, placing himself between her and the approaching man. "Stay behind me," he said, his voice quiet but carrying easily through the storm. He had an accent, subtle but definitely there. Italian, maybe. "That's my girl," the hooded man said, and I could hear the anger and something worse underneath it. "She's coming with me." "I don't think so." The seated man, standing now, didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. There was something in his tone that made the hair on my arms stand up despite the cold and wet. "I don't want trouble," the hooded man said, but he was still advancing. "Just give me the girl," and he pulled something from his pocket. Metal glinted in the lamplight. A knife. I was still 10 feet away. Too far. Too slow. Everything seemed to happen in slow motion and too fast all at once. The hooded man lunged forward. The standing man moved. I'd never seen anyone move like that outside of movies. One moment the knife was there, threatening. The next, the standing man had somehow gotten inside the other man's reach, his hand clamped around the wrist holding the weapon. There was a sharp crack, audible even over the rain, and the hooded man screamed. The knife clattered to the concrete. 2 more men appeared from the darkness, and I realized they'd been there all along, waiting. They wore dark suits that were somehow still crisp despite the rain, and they moved with the same predatory grace as the first man. They grabbed the hooded man, who was cradling his wrist and moaning. "Take him somewhere quiet," the first man said. "Have a conversation about appropriate behavior." "Please," the hooded man whimpered. "I didn't mean... I'm not interested in your excuses." The first man's voice had gone colder than the rain. "You terrified a child. You'll answer for that." The 2 suits dragged him away into the darkness. I finally reached the pavilion, taking the steps 2 at a time, and Chloe turned and saw me. "Mom!" She threw herself into my arms. shaking so hard I could feel it through both our soaked clothes. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. My phone died, and then that man. He started following me from the subway, and I didn't know what to do, and—" "Shh. It's okay. You're okay now." I held her tight, one hand stroking her wet hair, my own hands shaking with reaction. "You're safe. I've got you." Over her head, I met the eyes of the man who'd saved her. Up close, I could see him more clearly. Dark hair, expensively styled despite the rain. Sharp features that were probably handsome when they weren't set in an expression of controlled menace. Eyes that were assessing me the same way I was assessing him, cataloging, judging. "Thank you," I managed, my voice unsteady. "Thank you so much. I don't know what would have happened if—" "Nothing good," he said simply. He pulled a handkerchief from his pocket, somehow still pristine, and offered it to Chloe. "For your face." She took it hesitantly, wiping at the mixture of rain and tears. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'm sorry I bothered you. I just saw you sitting here and I thought—" "You thought correctly." He looked at me again. "Where do you live?" I hesitated. Every instinct I had about stranger danger was screaming, but he'd just saved my daughter from God knows what. And Chloe was trembling against me, and the rain showed no signs of stopping. 5 blocks south," I said finally. "Near Jefferson." He nodded once. "I'll walk you home. It's not safe for you to be out here alone. We don't want to trouble you any more than we already have," I started, but he was already removing his coat, a long, dark overcoat that probably cost more than my monthly rent, and draping it over Chloe's shoulders. "No trouble," he said. His eyes found mine again, and there was something in them I couldn't quite read. Not threat, not exactly, but not simple kindness either. "I insist." Chloe pulled the coat tighter around herself, and I could see her starting to cry again, this time with relief. I wasn't in a position to argue. "Thank you," I said again, feeling inadequate. What words covered this? What could I possibly say to express my gratitude for him saving my daughter from whatever that man had intended? We started walking, him falling into step beside us as I kept one arm around Chloe. She pressed against my side, still shaking. The rain had let up slightly to a steady drizzle, and in the relative quiet, I could hear our footsteps echoing off the wet pavement. "What's your name?" he asked, looking at Chloe. "Chloe," she said softly. "Chloe Turner. It's good to meet you, Chloe Turner, even under these circumstances. I'm Gabriel Marino." He glanced at me. "And you?" "Jessica. Jessica Turner." I tried to read him, this man who'd appeared from nowhere and handled a knife-wielding attacker like it was nothing. "I can't thank you enough for what you did." "You already have." We turned a corner, heading back toward my street. "Tell me, Chloe, why were you out so late?" "Tutoring," she said, her voice still small. "At the library. I'm behind in math, and there's a free program on Thursday nights. My phone died and I didn't realize what time it was until they were closing up." "Long walk from the library to here," Gabriel observed. "I got off at the wrong subway stop," Chloe admitted. "I was distracted and missed my usual one. And then when I came up, that man was there. He kept following me, saying things. I tried to walk faster, but he kept getting closer. And then he tried to grab my arm, and I just ran." My grip on her tightened. The thought of what could have happened made me feel sick. "You did the right thing," Gabriel said. "Running, finding help. Smart girl." We walked in silence for another block. I snuck glances at him, trying to figure out who this man was. The expensive clothes, the way those other men had appeared when needed, the casual violence with which he'd disarmed the attacker. None of it screamed ordinary businessmen. But he'd been sitting alone in a park in a rainstorm, and he'd helped my daughter without hesitation. "Here," I said as we reached my building. The word came out more bitter than I intended. It was a dump, no way around it. Cracked facade, one window on the second floor covered with cardboard, graffiti on the door that the landlord never bothered to clean. I saw Gabriel take it all in with those sharp eyes. We climbed the 3 steps to the entrance, and I fumbled for my keys. Chloe was still wrapped in his coat, and she looked so small and young in it, the fabric pooling around her feet. "Thank you," I said one more time as I got the door open. Really, I don't know how to repay. No repayment necessary. He reached into his pocket and produced a card, small and white. But take this. If you need anything, if there's any trouble, call that number. I took it hesitantly. It had a phone number and nothing else. No name, no business, just digits. I don't understand. You don't need to. He looked at Chloe, who was starting to take off his coat. Keep it for now. You can return it another time. But it's expensive. We can't. I insist. His tone made it clear the discussion was over. He looked at me one more time, and again I had that feeling of being catalogued, assessed. What he was looking for, I had no idea. Lock your door. Check your windows. This neighborhood isn't safe. I know, I said quietly, as if I needed the reminder. He nodded once more, then turned and walked back into the rain without another word. Chloe and I stood there watching him disappear into the darkness, and I realized my hands were shaking again. Come on, I said, guiding her inside. Let's get you dry. Our apartment felt different when we stepped inside. Smaller somehow. I helped Chloe out of her wet clothes and into dry ones. Made her hot tea even though it was probably too late for caffeine. Didn't care. She sat on the couch wrapped in blankets. Gabriel Marino's expensive coat draped carefully over the back of a chair. I'm sorry, Mom, she said again. I should have charged my phone. I should have been more careful. None of this is your fault. I sat beside her, pulling her against me. That man, he's the one who did wrong, not you. But if I hadn't gotten off at the wrong stop, then he would have followed some other girl. I kissed the top of her head. You were smart, Chloe. You found help. You kept yourself safe until I could get there. Who do you think he was? She asked. Gabriel, I mean. He seemed dangerous, I finished. Yeah, I noticed that too. But he helped me. He did. I looked at the card sitting on our coffee table, white and innocuous. He definitely did. We sat there for a long time, listening to the rain and the neighbors arguing upstairs and all the familiar sounds of our small, shabby life. But something had changed tonight. I couldn't quite name what it was, but I could feel it. A shift in the world around us. Gabriel Marino had entered our lives for just a few minutes, had saved my daughter, had looked at me with those assessing eyes, and he'd given me his number, just in case. I picked up the card again, running my thumb over the raised digits. No normal person gave out cards like this. No normal person handled attackers the way he had. No normal person had suited men appear from the shadows at his command. I should have been more afraid. Should have been worrying about what kind of man we'd just encountered. But all I could think about was Chloe's face when she'd run to him. The absolute terror that had been there, and the way it had disappeared when he'd placed himself between her and danger. Whatever Gabriel Marino was, whoever he was, he'd protected my daughter when she needed it most. For now, that was what mattered. I tucked the card into my wallet, behind my driver's license where it wouldn't get lost. Just in case, I told myself. Just in case we needed help again. I had no idea how soon that would be. Friday morning arrived with weak sunlight filtering through our water-stained windows, the kind of pale November light that promised nothing good. I'd slept maybe 3 hours, kept jerking awake, convinced I heard Chloe screaming, only to find her curled up in her bed across our shared bedroom. Gabriel Marino's expensive coat folded carefully on the chair beside her like a talisman. I made coffee with hands that still shook slightly when I thought too hard about last night. The cheap instant kind that tasted like battery acid, but had enough caffeine to get me functional. My laptop sat open on the kitchen counter where I'd left it. The completed translation still pulled up on screen. I'd hit send at 6 this morning, 2 hours past the deadline, but apparently my client was understanding when I explained there'd been a family emergency. Chloe emerged around 9, moving slowly. Dark circles under eyes that were still red-rimmed. She didn't say anything, just came and pressed herself against my side while I wrapped my arms around her and tried not to think about what might have happened if Gabriel Marino hadn't been sitting on that bench. I'm staying home from school today, I told her. It wasn't a question. She nodded against my shoulder. I don't think I can go anyway. We spent the morning in a kind of suspended animation, both of us pretending to do normal things while actually just existing in the same space, taking comfort from proximity. I tried to work on another translation but couldn't focus. The words swam on the screen, meaningless. Finally, I gave up and opened a new browser tab. Gabriel Marino, I typed. The results were surprisingly mundane. Marino Imports, a company specializing in Italian wines and olive oils, with a professional website showing warehouses and shipping manifests. Marino Properties, a real estate holding company with several buildings listed in Manhattan. A few society page mentions, charity galas, nothing remarkable. On the surface, he looked exactly like what he'd claimed. A legitimate businessman with Italian connections. But I'd seen the way those men appeared from nowhere at his command. I'd seen him break someone's wrist without visible effort. I'd seen the cold promise in his voice when he ordered the attacker taken away for a conversation. None of that showed up in Google search results. "What are you looking at?" Chloe appeared behind me, peering over my shoulder. "Just trying to figure out who helped us last night. He seemed nice," she said quietly. "I mean, scary, but nice. Does that make sense?" "Unfortunately, yes." I closed the laptop. "How are you feeling?" "Weird." She wrapped her arms around herself. "I keep thinking about that man. The one who followed me. What he might have done if Gabriel hadn't been there. Don't think about it." I pulled her down onto the couch beside me. "You're safe. That's what matters. Do you think we should call the police? Report what happened?" I'd been wondering the same thing. "And tell them what? That a stranger saved you from another stranger, and we don't actually know what the second man wanted? We don't have names, descriptions, anything useful. Gabriel Marino is a name of someone who helped us. I'm not getting him involved with police when he's the reason you're sitting here safe." I heard the fierce protectiveness in my own voice and tried to moderate it. Maybe if something else happens. For now, let's just be grateful. The day crawled past. I made us lunch neither of us ate. Chloe tried to do homework and gave up. I reorganized the kitchen cabinets for something to do with my hands. The apartment felt different now, more oppressive. Every sound from outside made me tense. Every siren made my heart race. I kept looking at the windows, imagining threats I couldn't see. Around 3, Chloe finally fell asleep on the couch, exhausted from the previous night's terror and today's emotional hangover. I covered her with a blanket and stood at our window, looking out at the street below. Friday afternoon in Queens, people coming and going, completely ordinary, but I couldn't shake the feeling that everything had changed. Gabriel's card sat in my wallet where I'd tucked it last night. I took it out, studying the plain white surface with just a phone number embossed in black. No name, no business, nothing to identify who it belonged to if someone found it. That kind of anonymity spoke volumes about the kind of man he might actually be, but he'd saved my daughter. I held on to that thought like a lifeline. Saturday started the same as Friday. Chloe woke from nightmares twice during the night. I barely slept at all. We moved through the morning like ghosts, going through motions, not really present. I made breakfast. We sat at our tiny table, not eating it. The walls felt closer than ever. "I need to get groceries," I said finally, needing something normal to do. "Want to come with me?" Chloe shook her head. "I don't want to go outside yet." "Okay, I'll be quick. 30 minutes, tops." I grabbed my jacket, my wallet, the reusable shopping bags I'd bought years ago in a fit of environmental consciousness. "Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone." "Mom, I'm not 5. I know. But humor your paranoid mother anyway." The corner grocery store was 4 blocks away, a cramped place with narrow aisles and prices that were too high, but saved me the subway ride to somewhere cheaper. I moved through it mechanically, grabbing bread, milk, eggs, pasta, the staples we lived on. My mind wasn't on shopping. It kept replaying Thursday night over and over, seeing Chloe's terrified face, hearing her scream for help. I was in the checkout line when I heard it. Pop, 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 pop. Rapid succession, unmistakable. Everyone in the store froze for a split second. That moment of denial where your brain insists it must be fireworks or a car backfiring or anything except what it actually is. Then someone screamed, and the spell broke. "Everybody down!" The cashier dropped behind the counter. I dove for the floor, my shopping bags scattering. More shots, closer now, and the sound of squealing tires. People were yelling, crying, and I was scrambling for my phone because Chloe was home alone, and those shots sounded so close to our building. The shooting stopped as suddenly as it started. For a moment there was just shocked silence. Then the sound of car engines accelerating away and more screaming. I stayed low, my phone clutched in my hand, trying to call Chloe with shaking fingers. She answered on the first ring. "Mom? Are you okay? Are you safe?" "What's happening?" I heard gunshots and something hit the window and... "Stay away from the windows." I was already moving, crawling toward the store entrance. "Get in the bathroom, lock the door, stay low. I'm coming home right now." "Mom, I'm scared." "I know, baby, I know. I'm 2 minutes away. Stay in the bathroom." I ran. Didn't think about the groceries I'd dropped. Didn't think about whoever might still be out there with guns. Just ran. My lungs burning, my legs pumping, while my mind supplied increasingly horrific images of what I might find when I got home. Our building looked intact from outside, but I could see the shattered window on the second floor, glass glittering on the sidewalk below. Not our floor, thank God, but close enough. I took the stairs 3 at a time, fumbled with my keys, burst through our door. "Chloe!" "Bathroom." Her voice was high and thin with fear. I found her curled in the bathtub, exactly where I'd told her to be, her arms wrapped around her knees. But when I came through the door, I saw what she'd been talking about. Our tiny bathroom window, the frosted glass one that faced the street, had a neat round hole punched through it. A bullet hole. Oh my God. I reached for her, pulling her out of the tub and into my arms. "Are you hurt? Did any glass hit you?" "No. I was already in here when it happened." "Mom, what's going on?" "I don't know. But I did know. In that sick, certain way, you know things you don't want to be true. This neighborhood had always been rough around the edges. But this was different. This was the kind of violence that didn't care about collateral damage, about mothers and daughters just trying to survive." We stood there holding each other while sirens wailed closer, and I made a decision. Pride was a luxury I couldn't afford anymore. Safety mattered more than my dignity. Gabriel's card was in my pocket. My hands were shaking so badly it took me 3 tries to pull it out. "What are you doing?" Chloe asked. "Getting us help." I dialed before I could second-guess myself. He answered on the first ring. Yes. One word, calm and unsurprised, like he'd been waiting for exactly this call. "Mr. Marino, this is Jessica Turner. We met, I remember. What's wrong?" His directness cut through my panic. "There was a shooting, on our street. A bullet came through our window. My voice cracked. "I don't know what to do." "Where are you now?" "Home. In the bathroom with my daughter." "Are either of you injured?" "No." "Good. Stay there. I'll be there in 15 minutes. The line went dead. I stared at my phone, not sure whether I should feel relieved or terrified. I'd just called a man I didn't know, who might be involved in God knows what, and invited him back into our lives. But what choice did I have? The police would file a report, tell us we were lucky, and leave. They couldn't protect us. They couldn't make this stop. "Is he coming?" Chloe asked. "He's coming." We waited in that bathroom, sitting on the closed toilet lid because there wasn't room for both of us anywhere else, and listened to the sounds of the building coming alive with panic. Neighbors in the hallway, talking loudly, scared. Someone was crying. Mrs. Liu from next door was shouting at someone on the phone in rapid Cantonese. The world had gone insane, and all we could do was wait. Gabriel Marino arrived in 13 minutes. I knew because I was watching the clock, counting every second. His knock was firm, but not aggressive, and when I opened the door, he was standing there in different clothes than Thursday night, but with the same aura of controlled authority. This time he had 3 men with him, all wearing dark suits and the kind of alertness that spoke of professional security. "Jessica." He stepped inside, his eyes doing a rapid assessment of the space. "Show me where the bullet came through." I led him to the bathroom. He examined the window in silence, then looked at the trajectory, his expression growing progressively darker. One of his men was already on the phone, speaking in low tones. Another was checking the rest of our apartment, looking at sightlines and angles. "Sit down." Gabriel said, and his voice had gone very calm in a way that made my skin prickle. Both of you. We sat on our sagging couch. He pulled over the folding chair from our kitchen table, the one that wobbled, and sat facing us. His men had moved to positions by the door and window, watching, waiting. This wasn't random, he said without preamble. This was a territorial dispute between the Sinaloa cartel and a local gang trying to expand into their distribution area. They'd been building to confrontation for weeks. Today was the opening move. How do you know that? The question came out before I could stop it. His eyes met mine, and there was no pretense in them. Because I know who controls what in this city. And I know when those controls are being challenged. He paused. This neighborhood is going to get worse before it gets better. Much worse. Probably within the next few days. Chloe's hand found mine, gripping tight. What do? You leave. He said it simply, like it was the only logical option. You can't stay here. It's not safe. We can't afford to just move, I said, and hated how defeated I sounded. I work 16-hour days as a freelance translator and I can barely make rent here. I have maybe $300 in savings on a good month. My ex-husband disappeared 3 years ago without paying a cent of child support. I don't have family who can help. Moving isn't an option. What if it was? Gabriel leaned forward slightly. What if there was a way for you to have safe housing and keep your independence? I didn't trust the hope that flickered in my chest. I'm listening. I own properties throughout Manhattan. Commercial buildings mostly, but several have residential units for employees and business associates. I have a vacant apartment in West Village. 2 bedrooms, secure building, good neighborhood. You could live there. I already told you I can't afford... You'd work for it. He cut me off. Not rudely. Just matter of fact. My import companies deal with Italian suppliers. Wine, olive oil, specialty foods, textiles. I need translators for contracts, correspondence, documentation. You speak Italian? Fluently. I studied it in college, and I've been translating Italian to English for 8 years. Then you have a job. Legitimate work for legitimate pay. $3,000 a month plus the apartment. He watched my face carefully. It's not charity. I actually need the work done. My current translator is retiring and I was going to have to hire someone anyway. $3,000 a month. The same amount I was currently making working myself into the ground at all hours, taking whatever jobs I could find, never turning anything down even when the pay was insultingly low. Plus housing. Plus safety. It was too good. There had to be a catch. What aren't you telling me? I asked. Something that might have been respect flickered across his face. The building where the apartment is located. I live there too. In the penthouse. I'm telling you this now because I want you to understand that security in that building is extremely tight. I personally oversee it. If you live there, you'll be safe. But you'll also be living in a building where I can keep an eye on things. You mean keep an eye on us? I mean keep you safe, he corrected. There's a difference. I'm not interested in controlling your life, Jessica. I'm interested in making sure you and your daughter aren't caught in crossfire from a war that has nothing to do with you. Chloe was staring at him with something like hope on her face. I looked around our apartment, at the cracked walls and the window with the bullet hole and the pervasive smell of mildew we could never quite get rid of. Then I looked at my daughter, at the dark circles under her eyes, and the fear she was trying so hard to hide. Pride was a luxury. Safety was a necessity. When would we move? I heard myself ask. Monday morning. I'll send people to pack and transport your things. You won't have to do anything except show up. He stood, somehow making the gesture look decisive rather than dismissive. I'll have the paperwork drawn up. Proper contract, everything legal and above board. This is a business arrangement, not a favor. I need a translator. You need safe housing. We both benefit. Why are you doing this? The question came out smaller than I intended. You don't know us. Why do you care? He looked at me for a long moment, and I couldn't read what was in his expression. Thursday night, your daughter ran to me for help. She was terrified and alone, and she trusted me to protect her. That means something. In my world, when someone puts their trust in you like that, you don't walk away. What is your world exactly? Nothing you need to worry about. He moved toward the door. his men falling into formation around him with practiced ease. Monday morning, 8 a.m. Be ready. Wait. I stood up, my legs unsteady. I have conditions. He turned back, one eyebrow raised slightly. The work has to be legitimate. Real translation work, nothing illegal, nothing questionable. If I'm translating something and it doesn't seem right, I walk away. No questions asked, no pressure. I lifted my chin, trying to look more confident than I felt. And my daughter doesn't get involved in whatever else you do. She's completely separate from any business you have that isn't legal. Agreed. He didn't even hesitate. Anything else? That apartment, we're really just employees using company housing? This isn't some kind of arrangement where you expect... I couldn't finish the sentence with Chloe standing right there, but he understood. I expect you to translate documents and live in a safe place. His voice had gone cold. Nothing more. I'm not that kind of man, Jessica. I believed him. I didn't know why, but I did. Then yes, we'll move Monday. He nodded once, then looked at Chloe. You'll like the neighborhood. Good schools nearby, safe streets. You can walk around without looking over your shoulder. Thank you, Chloe said softly, for everything. You're welcome. He was halfway through the door when he paused. Pack what matters to you. The furniture here isn't worth moving. The new place is furnished. Then he was gone, his men following like shadows, and I was left standing in our bullet-damaged apartment wondering what exactly I'd just agreed to. Chloe threw her arms around me. We're really leaving? We're really leaving. I held her tight, trying to ignore the voice in my head asking what I'd just gotten us into. Monday morning. We start over. Do you trust him? She asked against my shoulder. I thought about Gabriel Marino sitting calmly in a rainstorm, about the way he'd moved to protect my daughter without hesitation, about the coldness in his voice when he promised the man who'd frightened her would answer for it. I thought about his eyes when he looked at our shabby apartment, the way he'd offered help without making it feel like pity. I don't know, I admitted, but I trust that he'll keep us safe. Right now, that's enough. We spent the rest of Saturday sorting through our belongings, deciding what to keep and what to leave behind. Not that we had much. 3 years in this place, and we'd accumulated almost nothing worth taking. Clothes, books, a few photos, Chloe's schoolwork. The furniture was trash. Gabriel had been right about that. The appliances belonged to the landlord. In the end, everything that mattered fit in 4 boxes and 2 suitcases. Is that really it? Chloe asked, looking at our meager pile. That's it. I tried not to let it depress me. Fresh start, right? Fresh start, she echoed, but she was smiling. Sunday morning I called our landlord, a man who barely spoke English and had never fixed anything in the 3 years we'd lived here. I told him we were leaving, emergency situation, and he could keep the security deposit. He didn't argue. Probably relieved to have the unit back for the next desperate family. We spent the day in a strange limbo, still in the apartment, but already mentally gone. I kept looking at Gabriel's card, at the number I'd called in desperation. Tomorrow we'd move into a building where he lived, where he'd be nearby, watching, protecting us, he said. I wanted to believe it was that simple. Mom? Chloe was holding Gabriel's coat, the expensive one he'd draped over her shoulders Thursday night. What do I do with this? Bring it. We'll return it once we're settled. She folded it carefully, reverently almost. He saved my life. He did. And now he's saving us again. He's giving us an opportunity, I corrected. We still have to make it work. But she was right, in a way. Gabriel Marino had appeared in our lives at the exact moment we needed him most, had offered solutions to problems I couldn't solve on my own. It should have felt too convenient, too suspicious. Instead, it felt like the first time in 3 years that someone had actually seen us, had recognized that we were drowning and thrown us a lifeline. Tomorrow we'd take it, whatever came after, whatever complications or consequences. At least we'd be safe. At least Chloe could sleep without fear. At least I could stop watching every shadow for threats. Monday morning couldn't come fast enough. At 7:45 there was a knock on our door, and when I opened it, 3 men in casual work clothes stood there with moving equipment and professional smiles. They handed me coffee from an expensive cafe and proceeded to pack up our entire life in under 2 hours, with more care than our belongings had ever received. The drive to Manhattan felt like crossing into another country. We went from worn-down Queens to West Village with its tree-lined streets and brownstones, and the kind of architectural beauty I'd forgotten existed. Gabriel's building stood on a quiet corner, all red brick and iron balconies and careful maintenance. The doorman greeted us by name. The elevator was smooth and silent. 8th floor. Our door was on the right. I slid the key into the lock and pushed it open. Light. That was the first thing that hit me. Actual natural light streaming through large windows, the kind of brightness I'd almost forgotten existed. Chloe pushed past me, her sharp intake of breath echoing my own reaction. The living room stretched out before us with cream-colored walls and enormous windows overlooking the street below. I could see trees. Actual trees visible from inside our apartment. The furniture was simple but new. A gray couch that looked untouched. A real wood coffee table. A mounted television. Everything clean and whole and working. The kitchen made me stop breathing. Functional appliances, counter space, a window above the sink. Everything I'd been living without for 3 years suddenly available again. The bathroom had clean white tile and no rust stains. A mirror that wasn't cracked. Water pressure that actually worked. I caught sight of myself in that uncracked mirror and barely recognized the hope in my own expression. 2 bedrooms. Mine had a full-size bed in white linens, a dresser, a desk by the window. Chloe's was slightly smaller but perfect for her, with another window and empty shelves waiting for her books. "I have my own room," Chloe said, tears in her voice. "A real room, with a door that closes." We'd shared a bedroom for 3 years. The idea that she could have her own space was almost too much to process. We stood there crying while the movers brought up our boxes and pretended not to notice 2 women falling apart over the simple dignity of separate bedrooms and working appliances. By noon, our meager possessions were arranged in this space that felt impossibly large. Chloe started unpacking with enthusiasm I hadn't seen in years. I made us lunch from groceries that had somehow already been stocked in the refrigerator, and we ate at the kitchen table by the window, watching people walk by below. I kept waiting for someone to tell me there'd been a mistake, but no one came. This was real. Around 3, Gabriel knocked. He stood in the hallway in a dark gray suit, holding a leather folder. "May I come in?" I stepped aside, suddenly aware of my worn clothes and lack of makeup. He looked around with those sharp eyes, assessing. "The apartment is perfect," I said quickly. "I can't thank you enough. No thanks necessary. This is business." He set the folder on the kitchen table. "I have the paperwork for you to review and sign." Chloe hovered in her doorway, watching with mixed gratitude and wariness as Gabriel spread documents across the table with practiced efficiency. "The apartment is being registered as company housing for an employee of Merino Imports," he explained. "The process takes a few weeks, but it's a formality. This is your residence, effective immediately." The lease was straightforward. 12 months, renewable. Rent covered as employment compensation. My name typed neatly at the top. The employment contract outlines your position as primary translator for Merino Imports. You'll translate commercial documents, contracts, correspondence requiring Italian to English conversion. Payment is $3,000 monthly, transferred to whatever account you provide. Health insurance included after 90 days. Health insurance. I'd been without it for 2 years, living in constant terror of medical emergencies. You'll work remotely unless specifically needed on site. My assistant, Sophia Valentini, will coordinate assignments. He slid me a business card. Her contact information. "The work is legitimate," Gabriel said, his voice harder and more direct. "You'll translate real commercial contracts for real business. Merino Imports deals in wine, olive oil, specialty foods, all legal trade. You won't be exposed to anything questionable. And if I am, then you tell me, and we address it." He didn't look away. "You have my word." "I have conditions," I said. "I remember. Legitimate work only, which we've established. And your daughter remains completely separate from any business dealings outside Merino Imports." He glanced at Chloe. "That includes her never being exposed to anything illegal or dangerous. Agreed?" "Agreed." I picked up the pen, hesitated. Why are you doing this? Really? He was quiet, considering. Because your daughter ran to me for help, and I choose to honor that trust. Because I have resources that can solve your problems without causing me hardship. Because in my world, family and loyalty matter above everything, and when someone becomes my responsibility, I take that seriously. He paused. You and Chloe became my responsibility Thursday night. This is me following through. It should have sounded possessive. Instead, it sounded like a promise. I signed the papers. Gabriel collected them efficiently. Sophia will email tomorrow with your first assignment. Probably a straightforward commercial contract to start. He stood. If you have apartment problems, there's a building superintendent. But you can also call me directly. I have your number. Yes. He looked at Chloe. There's a good school 3 blocks north, PS 261. I had Sophia start the transfer paperwork. You'll need to complete enrollment in person, but the process is underway. Chloe's face lit up. A new school? Better curriculum? Safer environment? You should start next week. Thank you, Chloe said. Emotion packed into those words. For everything, you're welcome. He looked at me once more, that assessing gaze making me feel simultaneously exposed and protected. If you need anything, call. Then he was gone, leaving us standing in our new apartment surrounded by unpacked boxes and the overwhelming reality of how our lives had just changed. The first days unfolded with unexpected rhythm. Tuesday morning, Sophia's email arrived at 8 sharp, professional and friendly. She'd attached a commercial contract between Merino Imports and a Tuscan winery, with formatting notes and terminology resources. The work was straightforward, pay double my usual freelance rates. I completed it in 4 hours. Sophia's response came within 30 minutes. Perfectly done, payment processing end of week. Wednesday, I took Chloe to PS 261. The school was clean, well-maintained, with actual resources. She'd start Monday. Thursday brought another translation for a Sicilian olive oil supplier. Sophia included cheerful notes and reference materials. I was starting to like her efficiency and friendliness. Friday afternoon, Gabriel appeared briefly. Just checking maintenance issues, he said. Wanted to ensure we were settling in. The conversation lasted maybe 5 minutes, professional and distant. But I noticed how his eyes lingered on our living room where we'd made the space feel lived in. You're adapting well, he'd said, before leaving. Saturday morning, he appeared again checking the heating system. He tested radiators, asked about hot water. I followed him around, assuring everything was perfect. You don't have to be nervous, Jessica, he'd said with something like amusement. If something isn't working, I need to know. Everything is working. Better than anything I've had in years. Good. He'd moved toward the door, paused. How's Chloe handling the transition? Excited about school. Nervous, but excited. That almost smile appeared. First day jitters. Normal. 2 visits in 1 week felt like a lot for a landlord. Or maybe I was reading too much into it. By Friday night, a week after moving in, I was starting to believe this might be sustainable. The work was steady. Chloe was happy. The apartment felt more like home every day. I went down to check mail around 8 and found Gabriel in the small common area off the lobby. He was carrying cloth shopping bags from an upscale market, looking surprised to see me. Jessica. Evening. Evening. I clutched my mail. Just getting mail. I just got food. He glanced at his bags. There's a market 3 blocks over that imports actual Italian products. Real Parmigiano Reggiano, proper cured meats, bread from a bakery that knows what it's doing. You cook? The question escaped before I could filter it. When I have time. My mother was from Napoli. She taught me that good food is not negotiable, even in America. You must miss her. Every day. She died 6 years ago. Cancer. His expression shifted, softer and sadder. She would have liked you. You have that same determination she had. That refusal to give up. I didn't know what to say, so I just stood there holding my mail. There's a good Italian restaurant about 3 blocks east, he said. Trattoria Romana. Family-owned, actual Italian family. They do Roman cuisine properly. The cacio e pepe is perfect. I love cacio e pepe. When I was in college, I spent a semester abroad in Florence. I lived off cacio e pepe and carbonara. You studied in Florence? Interest sparked in his expression. For how long? 1 semester, junior year. Translation program. It was the best time of my life. I'd go back in a heartbeat if I could. What's stopping you? Reality? Single mother, financial responsibilities, a daughter who needs stability. Dreams don't have to stay dreams forever, he said quietly. Sometimes circumstances change. We stood there, him with his groceries, me with my mail, and the air between us felt charged with something I couldn't name. Not quite attraction, though he was attractive in an intimidating way, but recognition. Like he saw me, really saw me. I should let you go, I said finally, before the cold items warm up. Right. He picked up his bags but didn't move. Do you cook, Jessica? Beyond necessity? I used to love it, when I had time and money and a kitchen that worked. You have a kitchen now. I do. I smiled despite myself. I've been eyeing those burners like they might disappear. His mouth curved slightly. Italian cuisine is about simple ingredients done properly. You should try making something from Florence. See if you can recreate those memories. Maybe I will. Maybe I could recommend some suppliers, places with proper Italian ingredients. If you're interested. I might be interested. I'll have Sophia send you information. The market I mentioned, a few others. You can't make real Italian food without real Italian bread. No, you really can't. We stood there another moment, neither moving, the silence stretching and becoming awkward. Good night, Jessica. Good night, Gabriel. He walked to the elevator. The doors slid open smoothly. He stepped inside, turned to face me, his dark eyes meeting mine once before the doors closed. I stood there alone, heart beating faster than it should from a simple conversation about cooking. This was dangerous. Not in the way Gabriel was clearly dangerous, but dangerous to me personally. To the walls I'd built after Ryan left, Gabriel kept appearing, kept offering help, kept looking at me with those eyes that made me feel visible, and I kept responding, kept extending conversations, kept finding excuses to stand too close. This was going to be complicated. I could feel that certainty settling into my bones, and just like Thursday night, I had no idea what to do about it except ride it out and hope we all survived intact. 2 weeks after moving in, I woke up realizing I'd stopped checking the windows for threats. That shift felt monumental. Chloe had started at PS 261 and came home daily with stories about teachers who actually taught, and a friend named Maya she'd made. My work had fallen into steady rhythm. Sophia sent assignments 3 or 4 times a week, always with cheerful notes. The money hit my account like clockwork. For the first time in 3 years, I had enough. But Gabriel had started appearing more frequently, and I suspected the building didn't require as much maintenance as he claimed. Tuesday, he checked a perfectly functioning radiator. Wednesday, water pressure. Thursday, window seals. Each visit lasted 10 or 15 minutes, always professional, always with legitimate-sounding reasons. But I caught how his eyes lingered when he thought I wasn't looking, how he seemed to relax when he stepped into our apartment. Friday night, Chloe cornered me while I made dinner. She'd been quieter all week, watching me with that knowing teenage expression. Mom, can I ask you something? Always. I kept stirring pasta, hoping this wouldn't be uncomfortable. Does Gabriel like you? My hand stilled. He's my employer, Chloe. He's making sure we're settling in. That's not what I asked. She had her arms crossed. I asked if he likes you. Likes you. That's not... It's complicated. I turned to face her. Why are you asking? Because he looks at you differently than other people look at you. Like he's actually seeing you, not just looking past you. And you look at him the same way. I do not... I started. But she raised an eyebrow. It doesn't matter. Even if there was something there, which I'm not saying there is, it would be inappropriate. He's my employer. There's a massive power imbalance. But you think he's attractive. Chloe, it's okay if you do, Mom. I just want to know if you're thinking about it. Because I think he's thinking about it too. I sank into a chair, exhausted by pretending. I don't know what I think. He's attractive, yes. He's been kind to us. But I don't really know him. And what I do know suggests he's involved in things I shouldn't want to understand. Complicated doesn't mean impossible. You're allowed to have feelings. You're allowed to let someone take care of you for a change. When did you get so wise? I had a good teacher. She smiled and took over the pasta. Just think about it. And maybe stop pretending you don't light up every time he knocks. I did light up. That was the problem. Every time I heard his voice, something in my chest lifted in a way I'd almost forgotten was possible. Saturday morning, Gabriel knocked earlier than usual. When I opened the door, he wore casual clothes, dark jeans and a charcoal sweater, instead of his usual suit. "Jessica, do you have a few minutes?" "Of course. Come in." I was still in pajama pants and an old sweatshirt. He didn't sit, just stood looking like he was choosing words carefully. "I wanted to discuss expanding your role. There's a larger project coming, translating a complete product catalog. 3 months of work. I wanted to gauge your interest." "I'm definitely interested." "Good. I thought we could discuss details over dinner. Monday night, if you're available. There's a restaurant in Tribeca I think you'd enjoy." It took me a moment to process. Dinner. To discuss work. To discuss work. And perhaps have a conversation that isn't interrupted by radiator inspections. His mouth curved slightly. "Unless you'd prefer to continue these conversations in 5-minute increments while I invent increasingly implausible reasons to knock on your door." Despite myself, I laughed. The radiator inspection was particularly creative. "I thought so. Sophia told me it was obvious, and I should stop pretending." He looked at me directly. "Have dinner with me. Let me take you somewhere nice and have an actual conversation." I should have said no. Should have maintained boundaries. But Chloe's words echoed in my head, and I was tired of always choosing the safe option. "Monday night. What time?" "I'll pick you up at 7. Wear something nice. The restaurant has a dress code." I spent Sunday having a crisis about what to wear. My wardrobe consisted of worn jeans and practical shirts. I had exactly one dress that could qualify as nice. Dark wine-colored, bought for a wedding 4 years ago. Chloe found me standing in front of my mirror Monday evening. "You look beautiful, Mom." "I look like I'm wearing a 4-year-old dress because I can't afford a new one." "You look elegant. But wear the black boots, the ones with the small heel." She was right. The boots added an edge that made the dress feel intentional. I left my hair down, added minimal makeup, tried not to feel like an imposter. Gabriel knocked at exactly 7 in a dark blue suit that fit perfectly. "You look beautiful," he said quietly. "You clean up pretty well yourself." I grabbed my coat and turned to Chloe, pretending not to watch. "I have my phone. Call if you need anything." "Have fun, Mom." She was grinning. The restaurant was intimate lighting, white tablecloths, choreographed waiters. Gabriel knew the host by name. We were led to a corner table offering privacy and a view. He ordered wine in flawless Italian, conversed with our waiter, seemed completely at ease in a way that highlighted how out of my depth I felt. "Relax," he said once we were alone. "It's just dinner." "It's really not though, is it? This is you taking me somewhere expensive and impressive. Both. I do want to discuss the catalog project, but I also wanted an excuse to take you somewhere that isn't your kitchen." "Why? You barely know me, Gabriel." "You're not just anything. You're a woman who was working herself into the ground trying to provide for her daughter, who accepted help when needed but maintained pride and set boundaries, who translates my contracts with precision I haven't seen in years." He paused. "I find that compelling." Our food arrived, and conversation shifted to safer topics. He asked about Florence, and I told stories I hadn't thought about in years. He listened with genuine interest, asked questions that showed he cared about answers. "What about you?" I asked eventually. "Did you grow up speaking Italian?" "At home, yes. My mother refused to let me forget where I came from." Something sad crossed his face. "She died 4 years ago. Car accident. Drunk driver ran a red light." "Gabriel, I'm so sorry. It was quick. She didn't suffer. But it changed things. Made me reevaluate what mattered." He looked at his wine glass. "I'd spent so long building my business, accumulating power, and for what? My mother was just gone. Is that when you closed yourself off?" He looked at me sharply, then softened. "You're perceptive." "Yes. I focused on work, making sure everyone who depended on me was taken care of. Personal connections felt too risky, too much potential for loss. Until now. Until a woman and her daughter stumbled into my life and reminded me some risks are worth taking. The air between us felt charged. I should have redirected, kept things light. Instead, what exactly is your business, Gabriel? The parts that aren't importing wine? He was quiet, studying my face. Are you sure you want that answer? I'm not sure of anything, but I think I need to understand what I'm potentially getting involved in. I oversee certain operations in Manhattan. Territory control, resource allocation, protection services. There are aspects that exist in legal gray areas. I won't pretend otherwise. But the core is providing structure and security where those things are otherwise lacking. You're talking about organized crime. I'm talking about filling power vacuums that would otherwise be filled by people with far less scruples. He didn't look away. I won't lie to you, Jessica. What I do sometimes requires getting my hands dirty. But I have rules. Lines I don't cross. And the legitimate parts, merino imports, the properties, those are real. I sat processing. Do you want me to know the details? Do you want to know? No. The answer surprised me with its certainty. I don't think I do. I can see what's in front of me. A man who saved my daughter, who gave us safe housing and legitimate work. A man who's been respectful and kind even though he has power to be otherwise. That's what I choose to focus on. The rest is your world. Not mine. Not Chloe's. As long as that line stays clear, I can live with not knowing everything. Relief crossed his features. You're remarkably pragmatic. I'm remarkably desperate to keep my daughter safe and fed. Pragmatism is just what that looks like. I think you're stronger than you give yourself credit for. He reached across the table, fingers hovering near mine without touching. I think you see the world clearly, and I think that's why I can't stop finding excuses to knock on your door. My heart was beating so hard I could feel it in my throat. Gabriel, we should go before I say something that makes this even more complicated. We walked back in silence, the November air cold enough to see our breath. We walked close enough that our arms occasionally brushed. At the building entrance, he paused. The streetlights cast shadows across his face. Thank you for tonight, I said. For dinner, for the conversation, for being honest. Thank you for listening, for not running when I told you the truth. I'm tired of running. I've been running for 3 years. Maybe it's time to stop and see what happens when I stand still. He reached out slowly, his thumb brushing my cheekbone. Make a wish, he said softly, holding his thumb where I could see a tiny eyelash. I closed my eyes and wished for something I couldn't articulate. Safety, stability, courage. When I opened them, he was closer, his face inches from mine, and the world narrowed to this moment. I could have closed the distance, could have risen on my toes and kissed him. Every cell in my body screamed to do exactly that. Instead, I stepped back, my hand coming up between us. I can't. Not yet. This is too much. Too fast. I understand. He dropped his hand immediately, stepping back. I'm not going anywhere, Jessica. Take whatever time you need. You're being very patient. I'm being selfish. I want you comfortable, not compliant. I want you to choose this because you want it. His eyes held mine. So take your time. I'll be here when you're ready. And if I'm never ready, then we'll stay exactly as we are. And I'll be grateful you're in my life in whatever capacity you'll allow. He opened the building door. Good night, Jessica. Good night, Gabriel. Upstairs, Chloe was still awake, pretending to read. She took one look at my face and grinned. So, how was dinner? Complicated, I said, sinking beside her. Really, really complicated. But good. I thought about Gabriel's thumb on my cheek, the weight of everything unsaid, the way he'd stepped back without hesitation when I'd asked for space. Yeah, it was good. The week after our dinner passed in a strange suspended tension. Gabriel kept his word about giving me space, but I could feel his presence in the building like a magnetic pull. He didn't show up with maintenance excuses anymore. Instead, I'd catch glimpses of him in the lobby, coming or going, and we'd exchange careful hellos that felt weighted with everything we weren't saying. My work expanded during that time. Sophia emailed midweek with a proposal to take on correspondence with European business partners, in addition to the contract translations. The pay increased to $4,000 monthly, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, I had actual financial breathing room. Not wealth, but the kind of security where I could buy Chloe new clothes without calculating whether we'd make rent, where I could replace our worn towels, where the constant low-grade panic about money finally started to ease. Chloe noticed the change in me. "You seem lighter, Mom," she said one evening while we cooked dinner together in our functional kitchen with its working burners and adequate counter space. "Like you're not carrying as much weight." "I feel lighter," I admitted. "Having enough makes a bigger difference than I remembered." "Is it just the money?" She was giving me that knowing teenage look again, the one that suggested she saw through my careful deflections. "Mostly the money." I focused on chopping vegetables, avoiding her eyes. "The money is the important part." "Sure it is." She didn't push, but her smile said she knew better. Gabriel started appearing in Chloe's life more directly during that week. Not in my space, respecting the boundary I'd set, but in the building's common areas where Chloe would run into him. She came home Tuesday afternoon talking about how he'd asked about school, whether she was enjoying PS 261, what subjects she liked best. Wednesday, he'd apparently brought her a book about architecture, telling her he'd noticed her sketching buildings in a notebook she'd left in the lobby. By Friday, Chloe was completely charmed. "He asked about my college plans," she told me, eyes bright with the kind of excitement I hadn't seen directed at an adult male figure in years. "Real questions, Mom, not the fake interested kind. He wanted to know what kind of architecture I liked, whether I'd thought about which programs might be good fits. He said he has connections at Columbia if I wanted an informational interview with someone in their architecture department." I watched her unpack her backpack. This 15-year-old girl who'd been forced to grow up too fast, who'd learned not to trust easily, who was now opening up to a man who represented both danger and safety in equal measure. The way Gabriel had approached her, careful, respectful, genuinely interested, showed a thoughtfulness I hadn't expected. He wasn't trying to win her over to get to me. He was treating her like a person who mattered in her own right. "What do you think of him?" I asked. "Really think, not just the surface impression." She sat down at the kitchen table, considering seriously. "I think he's kind of scary in the way that really powerful people are scary. But I also think he's genuine when he's with us. Like we're not a job or an obligation, we're just people he cares about." She paused. "I think he's good for you, Mom. I think maybe you're good for him too. It's complicated, sweetheart. Everything worth having is complicated." She stood up, kissed my cheek. "Just don't overthink it so much that you talk yourself out of something that makes you happy." Saturday afternoon, Gabriel knocked. When I opened the door, he was holding 2 coffee cups from the expensive cafe 3 blocks over, the kind with real foam art on top. "Peace offering," he said, "for being pushy at dinner, and for giving you space when maybe conversation would have been better. You weren't pushy, you were honest." I took the coffee he offered, stepped aside to let him in, and the space was good. I needed to think. "Did you reach any conclusions?" He stayed near the door, not assuming welcome beyond the threshold. "Some. Still working on others." I gestured to the couch. "Stay. Chloe's at Maya's house for the afternoon. We could actually talk without radiator inspections." His smile was small but genuine. "I'd like that." We sat on opposite ends of the couch, coffee between us like a buffer, and for the first few minutes we just made small talk. The weather, the building, the neighborhood. Safe topics that didn't require vulnerability, but eventually the conversation found its way to deeper water. "Tell me about Florence," he said. "Really tell me, not just the highlights. What did you love about it?" So I told him. About walking the Ponte Vecchio at sunrise when the tourists were still asleep. About spending hours in the Uffizi getting lost in Renaissance paintings, seeing the brushstrokes up close, and understanding how Botticelli built his compositions layer by layer. About the food, yes, but more than that, about the philosophy of food. The way Italians treated meals as sacred time, as family ritual, as art form. About feeling for the first time like I was exactly where I was supposed to be, doing exactly what I was meant to do. "Why didn't you stay?" he asked. "After the semester, why come back?" Reality. Student visa expired, money ran out, and I had people expecting me back home. Plus, I was young and practical and convinced I needed a stable career. I laughed without humor. Look how that worked out. You have a stable career now. Thanks to you. Thanks to your skills, he corrected. I just provided the opportunity. You're the one doing work that's good enough that my European partners specifically requested you handle their correspondence. Sophia told me they've been impressed with your translations. That shouldn't have meant as much as it did. But hearing that my work was actually valued, that it wasn't just charity or obligation, made something warm unfurl in my chest. We talked for hours, trading stories and observations. He told me about his mother teaching him to appreciate art, about childhood trips to museums where she'd make him sketch the paintings they saw, training his eye for composition and color, about how she'd dreamed of him being an architect or an artist, something creative, and how disappointed she'd been when he chose business instead. Would you have done it differently? I asked. If you could go back, would you choose the path she wanted? No. His answer was immediate and certain. What I do, the business I run, it matters. It provides structure and security for hundreds of people who depend on me. It's not beautiful, but it's necessary, and I'm good at it. You can be good at multiple things. So can you. He shifted slightly closer. That master's degree you mentioned, in literary translation. Have you looked into programs? Gabriel, that's not realistic. Even with the increased pay, I have Chloe to support. Rent. I stopped, realizing. I don't pay rent. The apartment is part of compensation. Exactly. Your housing is covered, your income is stable, and Chloe's doing well in school. What's stopping you from at least researching programs, seeing what's possible? Fear, probably. Fear that I'll want it too much. Fear that I've waited too long and I'm not good enough anymore. Fear that you might actually get something you want. His hand found mine on the couch cushion between us. Jessica, you're allowed to want things for yourself. You're allowed to pursue dreams that don't directly relate to survival. We sat there, his hand warm over mine, and something shifted between us. The careful distance we'd been maintaining felt suddenly unnecessary. Would you like to have dinner again? I asked. Here, I mean. I could cook. Something Italian. Show you whether I actually learned anything in Florence. I would like that very much. His thumb traced small circles on the back of my hand. When? Next Friday? Chloe will be here, so nothing. I struggled for words that wouldn't make this awkward. I understand. Dinner with both of you. I'd enjoy that. The following week passed quickly. I researched master's programs in literary translation, telling myself I was just looking, not seriously considering. The application deadlines were months away. I had time to decide. But having the possibility, just knowing it existed as an option, changed something in how I saw my future. Friday arrived and I cooked. Real cooking. The kind I hadn't done in years. I made cacio e pepe from scratch, the way my host mother in Florence had taught me, with good imported pecorino that Gabriel had somehow arranged to be delivered. The kitchen filled with the smell of toasting pepper and melting cheese, and for a few hours I felt like the person I'd been at 21, before life had gotten complicated. Gabriel arrived exactly on time with wine and fresh bread. Chloe set the table with a formality that made me want to laugh and cry simultaneously. She was trying so hard to make this nice. Dinner was easy, comfortable, full of conversation and laughter. Gabriel asked Chloe about her architecture interests and actually listened to her answers, asked follow-up questions that showed he'd remembered previous conversations. He treated her with respect and genuine interest, and I fell a little more watching him do it. After dinner, Chloe excused herself to her room to work on homework that we all knew was probably just giving us privacy. Gabriel helped me clean up, and we moved naturally into the living room with wine, sitting closer on the couch than we had the previous week. Thank you for tonight, he said, for letting me be part of this. Your family, your home, it means more than you probably realize. What do you want from this, Gabriel? The question came out more direct than I'd intended. From me? From us? From whatever this is becoming? He set down his wine glass, turned to face me fully. I want a relationship with you. Real, not transactional. I want to know what makes you laugh, what you dream about, how you take your coffee, I want to be someone you trust, someone you choose to let in. He paused. I want to deserve the way you look at me when you think I'm not paying attention. How do I look at you? Like I'm someone worth hoping for. The space between us disappeared. I don't know who moved first, but suddenly we were kissing, his hands in my hair, mine clutching his shoulders. It was slow and exploratory, months of tension finally finding release. He tasted like the wine we'd been drinking and something darker, more complex. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against mine. I should probably go, he said, though he didn't move. Probably, but I didn't want him to. Chloe's here, and I don't want to. I know, you're right. I forced myself to pull back, to put necessary space between us. But stay a little longer? We could just sit, talk. Normal things. Normal sounds perfect. He stayed until nearly midnight, and we just talked and kissed and existed in that perfect bubble where everything felt possible. When he finally left, walking the short distance to the elevator that would take him to his penthouse, I stood in my doorway, watching him go and feeling something like hope take root in my chest. We fell into a pattern over the next 3 weeks. Gabriel would come for dinner 2 or 3 times a week. Sometimes Chloe was there. Sometimes she was at Maya's house, and we'd have the apartment to ourselves. On those nights when we were alone, things would get heated on the couch, hands exploring, clothes getting disheveled. But he never pushed for more than I offered. He respected the boundaries I set about not spending the night when Chloe was home, even though I could see in his eyes how much he wanted to stay. Then Ryan showed up, and everything got complicated again. It was a Thursday night, late, nearly 11. Chloe was asleep in her room. I was finishing up a translation at the kitchen table when I heard shouting in the hallway. Loud, angry, definitely male. Then pounding on my door. Jessica, I know you're in there. Open the door. Ryan's voice. I froze, my blood going cold. I hadn't heard from him in 3 years, not since he'd emptied our joint account and disappeared. What the hell was he doing here? Jessica! More pounding. You think you can just move somewhere expensive and not share the wealth? Open this door. Chloe appeared in her doorway, eyes wide with fear. Mom? Stay in your room, I said quietly, reaching for my phone. Gabriel's number was already pulled up. I'd programmed it to speed dial weeks ago. Lock your door. Open the goddamn door! Ryan was still shouting, still pounding. Neighbors would hear. Someone would complain. This was exactly the kind of scene I'd spent 3 years avoiding. I dialed. Gabriel answered on the first ring. Jessica, Ryan's here. Outside my door. He's drunk and angry and... I'm coming. 2 minutes. Don't open the door. The line went dead. I stood there clutching my phone, listening to Ryan continue his drunken tirade about money and rich boyfriends and how I owed him for the years of marriage. Then I heard the elevator ding, heard Gabriel's voice, cold and controlled in a way that made the hair on my arms stand up. You need to leave. Now. Who the hell are you? Ryan's belligerence faltered. This is between me and my wife. Ex-wife. And you're no longer her concern. Gabriel's voice got quieter, which somehow made it more threatening. You have 2 choices. Take the money I'm about to offer you and disappear permanently. Or refuse. And I handle this differently. I cracked my door open just enough to see. Gabriel stood between Ryan and my apartment. And even though Ryan was slightly taller, it was obvious who held the power. 2 of Gabriel's men flanked him, silent and intimidating. What money? Ryan asked suspiciously. $20,000. In exchange, you sign legal documents renouncing all parental rights to Chloe and agreeing never to contact Jessica or her daughter again. Break that agreement, and there will be consequences you won't enjoy. That's bullshit. She's my daughter. I have rights. You haven't exercised those rights in 3 years. You abandoned your family. The paperwork will simply formalize what's already true. Gabriel pulled an envelope from his jacket. The money is real. The offer expires in 30 seconds. Ryan looked at the envelope, looked at Gabriel, looked at the 2 men standing ready. Whatever he saw in their faces made him reach for the money. Fine. Where do I sign? My lawyer will contact you tomorrow with the documents. The money is yours once they're signed and notarized. Gabriel stepped closer, voice dropping even lower. If you contact Jessica or Chloe before then, or if you ever contact them after, I'll find you. Understand? Ryan nodded, clutching the envelope, and practically ran for the stairs. Gabriel watched him go, then turned to my door where I was still standing in the crack I'd opened. Are you okay? He asked. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Behind me, I heard Chloe's door open. Is he gone? She asked, her voice small and scared. He's gone, Gabriel said, his tone immediately gentler. And he won't be back. You're safe. I opened the door fully. Come in, please. He did, and Chloe threw her arms around him, crying with relief and residual fear. He held her carefully, one hand stroking her hair, murmuring reassurances. Over her head, his eyes met mine, and I saw the cold fury still there, barely contained. Ryan would never bother us again. Gabriel had made sure of that, and I should probably have been more concerned about how he'd made sure, about what consequences he'd threatened. But all I felt was grateful that someone finally had protected us when we needed it most. The days after Ryan's confrontation changed something fundamental between Gabriel and me. The pretense of careful distance evaporated. He'd protected us in the most direct way possible, and pretending we were just employer and employee felt absurd after watching him intimidate my ex-husband into signing away his parental rights. Gabriel started spending more time in our apartment than in his penthouse. Not every night, respecting Chloe's presence and my boundaries, but often enough that his coat ended up on our rack, his preferred coffee in our cabinet, his presence woven into the fabric of our daily routine. He'd show up for dinner 3 or 4 nights a week, sometimes with takeout from the Italian restaurants he owned, sometimes just to eat whatever I'd cooked, and help Chloe with homework afterward. I started learning the details of his legitimate businesses during those evenings. Merino Imports wasn't just a cover. It was a thriving operation with actual warehouses in New Jersey, real suppliers in Tuscany and Sicily, legitimate contracts with restaurants and specialty stores throughout the Northeast. He owned 2 restaurants outright, both serving traditional Italian cuisine, both profitable. The real estate holdings were extensive, buildings throughout Manhattan that generated consistent rental income. The legal side funds everything else, he explained one night while we cleaned up after dinner. It's not just for show. These are viable businesses that would survive even if I walked away from the other operations tomorrow. Would you? Walk away, I mean. He was quiet for a moment. I don't know. That world has rules, structure, loyalty that matters. But it's also violent and exhausting, and there's always someone trying to take what you've built. His eyes found mine. Meeting you has made me question things I thought were settled. Wonder if there's a different way to live. 3 weeks after Ryan disappeared with Gabriel's money and his signature on legal documents, Gabriel invited me to dinner at one of his restaurants. Not as a date exactly, but as an introduction. I want you to meet Anthony, he'd said. He's my consigliere, my oldest friend. He's been asking about you. The restaurant was in Little Italy, warm brick interior, and tables covered in red checkered cloth, the kind of place that felt authentic because it was. Gabriel knew everyone by name, from the hostess to the line cooks. We were led to a private room in the back, where a man in his 50s waited, salt and pepper hair and sharp eyes that assessed me immediately. Anthony Fioraldi, he said, standing to shake my hand. I've heard a great deal about you, Jessica. Dinner was comfortable despite the obvious scrutiny. Anthony asked about my work, my background, Chloe's adjustment to the new school. Gabriel watched the interaction carefully, and I realized this mattered to him, that Anthony approved, that his closest advisor accepted me into the circle. Halfway through the meal, Gabriel excused himself to take a call. Anthony leaned forward the moment he left. He's different since he met you, Anthony said without preamble. Lighter, more patient. He's delegating responsibilities he used to insist on handling personally. He's prioritizing life over business in ways I haven't seen since Isabella died. Isabella was his wife? 4 years ago. Car accident. After she died, he closed himself off completely. Work became everything. We worried he'd burn himself out, or get himself killed taking unnecessary risks. Anthony studied me. You're good for him. I wanted you to know that. Whatever concerns you have about his world, about whether this is sustainable, I'm telling you that you make him better, happier, more human. When Gabriel returned, I saw him differently. Not just the powerful man who'd saved my daughter and given us security, but someone who'd been grieving and alone and had somehow found his way back through us. After dinner, Gabriel drove us to his penthouse. I'd never been there, had only imagined what it might look like. The reality was both more and less than I expected. Masculine elegance without ostentation, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, art on the walls that was actually good, furniture that invited sitting. It felt like him, controlled but warm underneath. "Why did you bring me here?" I asked, standing by those massive windows looking at Manhattan spread out below. "Because I want you to see where I live, who I am when I'm alone." He came up behind me, his hands settling on my hips. "Because I'm tired of maintaining distance when all I want is to be close to you." I turned in his arms. "Gabriel, I love you." The words came out simple and direct. "I know it's fast, I know it's complicated, but I love you. You and Chloe both. You've become my family in every way that matters." My throat closed with emotion. "I love you too. God help me. I do." We made love in his enormous bed with the city lights casting shadows across his skin. It was intense and emotional, months of tension finally fully released. Afterward, lying in his arms, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, safe and wanted, and like I'd finally found somewhere I belonged. "Stay the night," he murmured against my hair. "Chloe's at Maya's house. Stay with me." So I did. The conversation with Chloe happened the next afternoon. She'd been watching Gabriel and me navigate this relationship for weeks, and her teenager's radar had clearly picked up on the shift between us. "So you're together now?" she said. Not a question. "We're together," I confirmed. "Is that okay with you?" "Mom, I've been waiting for you to figure this out for like a month." She rolled her eyes affectionately. "Are you happy?" "I am. Scared, but happy." "What are you scared of?" "That it won't last. That something will happen and we'll lose all this. The apartment, the safety, him. That I'm setting us up for another disaster, like with your father." Chloe sat down beside me, suddenly serious. "Gabriel isn't Dad. Dad left when things got hard. Gabriel shows up when things get hard and fixes them. He looks at you like you're the most important person in the world. And he treats me like I matter, not like I'm just something he has to tolerate to get to you." She squeezed my hand. "I think he's good for us. I think it's worth the risk." When had my 15-year-old become so wise? My work expanded during this period too. Sophia contacted me about coordinating all international communications for Gabriel's legitimate businesses. Not just translation, but managing correspondence, coordinating with European partners, overseeing a growing portfolio of contracts and agreements. It was essentially becoming his international operations manager. The pay jumped to $6,000 monthly, and Sophia helped me hire an assistant to manage the increased workload. For the first time in my adult life, I had a real career. Not just survival jobs strung together, but actual professional growth, responsibilities that mattered, income that allowed security, and even some luxury. I was proud of what I'd built, even if it existed within Gabriel's structure. One evening, Gabriel brought up the master's degree again. "Have you looked into programs?" "I've researched. Columbia has an excellent literary translation program. Applications open in January for fall admission. You should apply." "Gabriel, even with the increased salary, tuition for Columbia is—" "I'll cover it." He raised a hand before I could protest. "Consider it an investment. Your education benefits my businesses long term. I need someone with advanced translation skills managing international operations. This is pragmatic, not charity. I can't let you pay for my education. Then consider it a loan. Pay me back if it makes you feel better. But don't refuse the opportunity out of pride." I agreed finally, under the condition that I'd reimburse him eventually. We both knew I probably never would, but the fiction let me accept with dignity intact. 3 months after that rainy November night when Chloe had